Okay, so we've already talked about contour line, we talked about value, and we've talked about drawing on a grid, and now it's time to put it all together. If you kind of get confused where your contour lines are, one of the things that you can do is you can take a pencil and you can come in and you can kind of darken those lines. You know, I'm going to use a Sharpie so you guys can see it. So when you draw teeth, you definitely want to get the gum line. Pay attention to what the gum line is. But you don't want to draw the lines between the teeth, because it's mostly just value anyway. Okay, so that's good. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I want to grid. So when you grid, I love these rulers, but if you don't have them, it doesn't matter, but you can see through. So you don't want to grid at the edge of the paper, you want to grid along the edge of your photograph, okay? And if you can see this ruler, it starts at, the 0 starts in an inch, so there's the 0, so I'm going to line that up with the edge of my paper. And then you can see the inches are right here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The tops, here. So these thicker pink lines go right with the inches, okay? Now I don't know if you're going to be using the exact same ruler, but in case you are, I know that those pink lines are the inches lines, so I'm just going to line, it's called a graphic ruler, so I'm going to line this line up so I know that I'm at the edge. You could do 1/2 inches if you want, so maybe I'll do 1/2 inches along this one. So the 1/2 inches are a little bit more like medium weight, so I'm going to do this by the 1/2 inch. And when you're doing gridding, you have to measure it all the way around on all 4 sides, okay? So that you know you're square when you go to do your lines. Take your time on this piece, you guys, because if this is off, it's going to throw you completely off. And you need to start at the same side. So start at the bottom, start on the left. I'm going to go ahead and connect these ends so I can just kind of, because that part isn't going to be in my drawing. Because you want it to be kind of even, if you can, like have it end on 8 or 8.5. And I'm going to come from the bottom again. The thinner your lines are, the better, because the more accurate your grid is going to be. But I want to use Sharpie so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I finished my grid. Since I changed my mind and decided to do 1/2 inch grid instead of an inch grid, I'm going to use my orange marker to label this. You can just do numbers, or you can do numbers and letters, whichever you're more comfortable with. So sometimes people will do like numbers going along the bottom, letters going along the top. But I'm just going to do numbers. So I always start on the left. Your process might not be the same as mine, and that's okay. But you do want to have each of these labeled in some fashion, and it has to match your other paper that you're going to create. So I'm going to start down here. So that's 1 and 1. Okay, so now we have, so this is 16 1/2 inches, so that's 8 inches wide. by, so it's 18, it's 9.5 inches tall. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna get your blank piece of paper. Now look, here's the way I do it. And like I said, your process might be different than mine. But the most important thing is that you do it the way that you think that it makes sense to you. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create the same grid on another piece of paper. It doesn't have to be in the same location on the paper, you guys. You're just gonna create an 8" by 9.5" grid. So the way I have my students do it is that you're going to create the grid, you're going to draw your contour lines onto this paper, and then after you get it drawn onto this paper, you're going to trace it onto a piece of gray paper. Now you can also do your grid directly onto your final paper, but what happens a lot of times is that the grid gets too dark and it's difficult to get it erased. When I start this grid, I'm just going to start on the edge of my paper. It doesn't matter as long as it's 8 inches wide by 9.5 inches tall. So 8 inches is right here. And then I'm just going to do every 1/2 inch. And again, I have to do all 4 sides. Take your time, make sure you're doing this accurately. It makes a difference. If you are off on your grid, your drawing's going to be up. You're going to be working on this project for a few weeks. And just think, if you do this quickly and you don't do it correctly, then you're going to, the whole time you're working on it, it's all going to be off just because you didn't want to take your time and do a good job to start with. So make sure you're doing a good job. There's my 8 inches. Oh, the other thing, guys, you don't want to have your ruler like this because that's going to get bigger, as this isn't going to be an accurate measurement. You want to make sure that you're square to the edge of your page. Make sure your pencil is sharp as well. You don't want a dull pencil. If you have a dull pencil, you could be off as much of as an 1/8 of an inch all the way around. So that's important. Okay, so I have my grid done. You guys you can totally grid this by the inch instead of the 1/2 inch if you want. Might be a little bit faster for you, and then you can just break down the parts that are confusing to you into 1/2 inches. So anyway, I'm at the edge of my paper now, so I'm going to go ahead and label 1, 2. If I've done this right, it should match. So that's the end. 16. Okay, so because I started on the left side, I don't want to label that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to label it on this side. Doesn't matter, it's the same difference. And actually, if you want, we'll just do it this. We'll label this as well so that it's not confusing. All right. So now we got our grid. Matches this grid. And you're going to do the same thing that you did before, where you look at the grid and you trace your contour lines from your portrait onto your grid. So I'm going to use the lighter pencil. So I'm just going to start here. And if you start getting confused and you start seeing these as teeth and they look like chiclets and they don't look right, just turn it upside down, okay? And it will, I promise, it's going to help you stop seeing it as a face and just start seeing it as lines and shapes. Okay, so I've already gone through how to grid with you. So instead of watching me do this whole grid, I'm going to grid it and then I'm going to come back. Okay, so now we've got our contour line drawing, we've got our gridded drawing. You're gonna need to save all of this for your final, for when you turn everything in. You're gonna use your second sheet for your reference. You'll end up using both of them probably. So now that you have this done, and it's nice and dark, that's fine. When you go to do your final, it's gonna be light and you're gonna trace it. So let me